Hey everyone, I'm Amanda Nova. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm a clinical nutritionist and holistic health practitioner, and today I'm going to take you through adrenal fatigue, and we're going to talk about what it is and how to support it. Now, if you see me going like this with my finger, it's because I'm actually referring to a lesson that I created on adrenal fatigue from my hormone course. So if you're interested in taking the whole course and learning about how to balance your hormones and the whole shebang, I will link that in the information. But today you are getting a sneak peek at the adrenal fatigue lesson that I created. So let's start with what the adrenal glands are so that we understand how they work within our body. So they're small triangular glands that sit on top of both of our kidneys. So we have two kidneys, we have two adrenal glands. They produce hormones that help us regulate metabolism, our immune system, blood pressure, our response to stress, and several other essential functions. So they're pretty important, although we don't hear too much about them unless we are hearing about things like adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue, however, while the term is thrown around quite a bit within naturopathic medicine and the alternative medicine space, it's not exactly recognized as an actual condition within traditional medicine. People do not see that as something that they treat. If you go to your PCP, your primary care physician, they're going to be like, okay, crazy. But you may have heard it within these naturopathic circles that we sort of run in, and it's important as something to address. And what I often say to people who challenge me and tell me it doesn't exist and say that I am just like a nutbag, I always say it's really a collection of symptoms, and it's a word that we use to describe a collection of symptoms that I will describe to you guys. So what adrenal fatigue is this collection of symptoms that is what we have coined to refer to when our adrenals cannot keep up with the stress response of our bodies. They actually become sort of immune to cortisol response. So it's not like they're just like, we're tired, kaput, like we're out of here. It's actually that our body is still continuing to produce high levels of cortisol, but our body is no longer responding to that the same way that it was before. So usually adrenal fatigue happens when people are in times of chronic prolonged stress. And I say this because there could be a stressful situation that you're in for a night. Maybe an event happens or something happens and you have a stress response. Now, let's put this getting stored in your body or trauma or anything like that aside, and let's just say that you have a traumatic experience and then the next day it's not like you have a deadline and you have to meet that deadline and you meet the deadline and then the stress goes away and you go back to your day-to-day life. This is not that. This is something like you are caring for a family member for a long period of time and you are just in extreme stress for a long period of time. You have a stressful job that is consistently stressful. You go through a physical stress. An environmental stress would be you live in mold or you're repeatedly having exposure to toxins that stress your body out. So it could be physical, emotional stress, psychological stress, it could be environmental. So there's a lot of different things, but over a long period of time where your body is repeatedly secreting cortisol and then your adrenal glands become overworked and they are no longer responding the way that they should be responding to them. Some signs and symptoms of adrenal fatigue are memory dysfunction, feeling tired and wired. So when you wake up in the morning and instead of feeling refreshed, you feel exhausted even though you had a full night's sleep. Pain in the back and neck, heart palpitations, anxiety, unexplained weight gain that you can't lose no matter what. You haven't changed how you eat, you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day and you exercise and you cannot lose weight. What is going on? Dry skin, hair, and nails, decreased libido, as well as increased emotional episodes like panic and anxiety. You're irritable all the time. So these are just some of the symptoms and signs of adrenal fatigue. So besides the stress, what causes it, right? So physical, mental, and emotional and environmental stress, as I had mentioned, anything that puts our bodies or minds into a constant state of fight or flight can burn out our adrenals and cause adrenal fatigue. Now, you may have heard this before, so I don't want to beat this into the ground, but I do like this analogy of a lion chasing a antelope, right? So the antelope wakes up and they get chased by the lion, and the animal response of the antelope is extreme stress, cortisol, right? Fight or flight. So they're either running for their lives, they freeze and play dead, whatever it is, they have a response in order to survive this lion coming after them, right? It's a means of survival. People in ancient times, if they were running from a lion or a bear or something like that, exactly the same thing. You would have that animalistic response, innate response. So our cortisol response to stress is to protect us and to keep us safe. It is not a negative thing. When it becomes a negative thing is when it becomes chronic. So when there are no longer wild animals chasing us around, yet instead we have bosses who are on our case. We have, like I said, family members that we're taking care of. We have, suddenly doing a presentation at work becomes the animal chasing us, and we just are living these crazy stressful lives. I mean, the past 2 years alone have been extremely stressful for a lot of people. There are a lot of people who were either in fight or flight prior to going into the pandemic, and now their bodies are completely their nervous systems are shot, or people who are coming out of this after living through this crazy life experience that we collectively experienced together. They're coming out of it and their nervous systems are in fight or flight. So when your body gets stuck within this chronic stress loop of fight or flight, often the hormones and the organs and the glands that help to protect us against this and cause us to be safe, they tend to go into overdrive, and then that's where issues come up, like adrenal fatigue. So some other things not directly related to this stress response that can cause stress within the body that I may not have mentioned are medical conditions. So I see this a lot in people that have autoimmune, people like me with Lyme disease, people that have lived in a moldy environment, as I had mentioned, and now have biotoxin illness or mold illness. There are prescription medications that can cause this, as well as just day-to-day things that we think are healthy, like dieting or over-exercising. People that really do intense exercise, that can also be a cause. Additionally, gut inflammation or digestive distress. So food allergies can cause inflammation and cause stress within the body. If you continue to eat things that you have an allergy to or an intolerance to or sensitivity that you may not know, then you actually continue to proliferate this cycle of stress within the body. So things like that. Another thing that also comes to mind is a poor sleep cycle. So circadian rhythm issues. I see this a lot in friends of mine who are doctors or nurses that maybe work off hours. They work in hospitals or things like that, and their circadian rhythm becomes off, and then suddenly their body is in fight or flight. They're gaining weight. They don't know why, and they can't get it off. So it's not just about weight, it's about the other symptoms as well, but just that one's sort of like a low-hanging fruit that I notice first and foremost when somebody comes to me and they're like, I have this weight on, it suddenly came on, I can't lose it, like what's going on? I'm like, adrenal fatigue. Okay, so how do we heal adrenal fatigue? So there are a few ways. So let's start with nutrition. So when healing adrenal fatigue, you'll want to reduce caffeine. Obviously, that's something that causes a spike within the body, alcohol as well, and sugar. Now, I'm not like a big restrictive diet person because I actually think that restrictive dieting can make adrenal fatigue worse, but those are really like the three things that I always am like, okay, if you can remove those or reduce them, I think that that's really helpful for adrenal fatigue, as well as really focusing on a whole food diet. So watching out for or reducing overly processed foods. And what I mean by processed foods are foods that are snacks, crackers. I mean, snacks is a very wide net, but like chips, crackers that are made from a ton of different ingredients, things like cereals, things made with white flour. So just things that are not whole food. So whole food is really fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, and then animal protein. So meat, proteins, those are really your whole foods. Foods that are in its original form, right? Before things start getting all crazy. And even if you eat a gluten-free diet, you can be eating things that are processed. So focusing on eating whole foods, whole nourishing foods, is how we get our nutrients, really, to rebuild our adrenals and our nervous system. So also making sure to add in things like sea salt, nuts, and seeds. So if you're eating a super duper low fat diet, or you took salt out of your diet, I don't say like go crazy on sodium, but you can add some Himalayan sea salt, and that's really supportive for your adrenal function. So something like that. Also avoiding extremes like keto, high fat, high protein, low fat, paleo. These are things where I see people doing these diets and they usually are in adrenal fatigue, or they're doing them and they don't know why. From personal experience, I was in the worst state of adrenal fatigue when I was doing paleo. And so people often ask me like why I have autoimmune and I'm against paleo, and it's because it really did not do great things for my body because it was just too extreme. Your body needs carbohydrates and it needs fiber. So it just has to be the right forms of that. So for me, cutting out quinoa and brown rice, was potentially damaging to the way that my body was assimilating nutrients. So I just say balanced, gentle, supportive. And then supplements that can help are DHEA, vitamin C, as well as Vitex, which is chasteberry. Now, I should also say that before starting any supplements, it's always great to work with a practitioner, do your research, don't just say Amanda Nova told me to take DHEA, because it's not great for everybody. But those are just some things that can be helpful. From an herbs and botanical perspective, there are things called adaptogenic herbs. Now, adaptogenic herbs actually help our bodies adapt to stress, whether it be environmental, physical, mental, emotional stress. That is what they do. That is the mechanism that they have within our body. So some of my favorite ones are schisandra berry, holy basil, as well as rhodiola. I really like those for adrenal fatigue specifically. So those are some really great ones. And then some other ones, if you have brain fog as one of your symptoms, which I'm not sure if I mentioned, but brain fog is another thing that people have issues with cognition and memory issues. You can try something like Siberian ginseng, which is a nootropic, and those are herbs that are specifically for cognitive function and the brain. Lastly, you really want to focus on the mind and body to support from a behavioral and lifestyle perspective. So things like breathing exercises. I post a lot of these on my Instagram, and I will continue to do more here on YouTube, but doing things like reducing your emotional and physical stress. So people, that's a crazy one, right? It's like when you go somewhere, you're like, I'm so stressed out, my body's so stressed, and they're like, well, reduce your stress, you shouldn't have any stress. Well, like, you have a job, you have children, you have a life, like, no stress is not an option for a majority of people, and I'm aware of that. What I like to teach is how we manage the stress that we have. How do we cope with it? How do we deal with it? How do we manage it? And then continue to pull that into our day-to-day life. So things like behavioral therapy, meditation, acupressure, which is another thing that I post on here that I also post on my Instagram. Doing things like that, a quick acupressure routine with some breathing, 5 minutes in the morning, can really reset your nervous system and also help reduce anxiety and panic and improve your sleep. Low impact exercise, this is a really hard one for people who are sort of like type A, go to handle, because people are like, I'm not losing weight, I want to exercise, I want to work out. It's really important with adrenal fatigue and getting your body out of fight or flight to do more low impact exercise like walking, yoga, Pilates. Those are the things that are going to help your body calm down and release the weight that it's been holding on to, as well as get yourself out of this cycle of stress. as well as journaling or being in nature. So go on a hike, go on a walk outside, spend time with people and laugh, and those things can really help you to manage it. Now, lastly, I just wanted to cover testing for adrenal fatigue. So there is not one specific blood test that can show you whether or not you have adrenal fatigue. And again, this is like because the medical system doesn't exactly recognize this. So you're not like getting your whole metabolic panel done and they're like, okay, great, let's test to see if you have adrenal fatigue. But a test that practitioners do, and you can self-test this as well by getting the tests from an Everly Well. I know that Vessel, you can also test your cortisol. Cortisol is what you're testing. So you want to get your cortisol tested, and there are saliva tests that certain naturopathic practitioners will do where they can actually see if you're in adrenal fatigue by seeing a saliva test with your cortisol. And what will happen is that they'll actually notice the pattern. So when you wake up in the morning till when you go to bed, you'll do this saliva test, and then they'll be able to see whether or not you are potentially in adrenal fatigue based on how much cortisol your body is producing at those various times of the day. So that's another one that's important. And I would say for getting tested, I think either check out the tests that they have, and I can link some of them in here, or work with a practitioner on that. There is a benefit to having somebody support you through something like adrenal fatigue. So that's my whole spiel on adrenal fatigue. But before I close out, I do want to say, yes, having someone to support you is really great through that, a practitioner, a nutritionist, a naturopathic doctor, whatever you want to bring on. I work with a lot of people through this. If it's not me, cool. Just having some support is helpful, because adrenal fatigue is not something that becomes reversed overnight. It takes time to get your natural rhythm back. It takes a while to get your body back into homeostasis. It takes a while to get your nervous system regulated, but it is possible and it does happen, but it didn't happen to you overnight that you got into this point, right? So this is how we bring you out of it, and it takes a little bit of time. So just be patient with yourself. Healing things like adrenal fatigue, it's all about patience and support and gentle and nourishing, and you can do it. I have, and I've helped a lot of other people through it. So that's all the happenings on adrenal fatigue. Please post any questions or comments in the comment section. And if you want to see more information about different naturopathic medicine and things that happen within the body, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next episode.